Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Aunt Cass. If I felt anything for the man sitting across from me at the dinner table, it would have been an incredibly romantic evening. The restaurant was dimly lit. We'd each had 2 glasses of red wine. There was a string quartet playing a lovely tune at the center of the dining room. And Samuel looked handsome that night. Well, for him. His suit was a size too big, and he had gotten a weird haircut that week. But he'd never looked better. Champagne? He asked me. Dear God, I thought to myself. He did not put the ring in a champagne glass. 3 minutes later, our waiter set a champagne glass down in front of me with a sparkling diamond ring at the bottom of the glass. I squealed and smiled at Samuel. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I kissed him, because that's what you do when you accept a marriage proposal. I slipped the ring on my finger. I did not want to, and would not marry this man. But my squeal of enthusiasm was real. I was thrilled to be his fiancée at last. Jack, a year ago, I received a different marriage proposal from a man who is Samuel's opposite in every way. Theodore is handsome, clever, ambitious, and can fill out a suit. We met at the magazine where I'd been working as an associate editor for 5 years. He started with us as a weekly humor columnist, and we began dating almost immediately. I was hesitant at first. I had avoided romantic entanglements ever since an incident during my junior year of college. Eventually, Theodore's small gestures won me over, saving the Times crossword for me and laying it on my desk every morning, surprising me with coffee from my favorite place in the village. Once I agreed to a first date, dinner at Bistro. I fell hard and fast. I had never been in love like that before. I couldn't wait to open my eyes and see him beside me every morning. And there was no moment of my life, exhilarating or devastating, that I didn't want to share with him. I did try to stop. I tried to keep things casual, suggesting that best friends with benefits could be an option for us. Theodore just laughed at me, his blue eyes sparkling. It was impossible. We were clearly meant to be more than friends. The inevitable was drawing closer and closer when Theodore suggested dinner at Bistro on the 2nd anniversary of our first date. I started to panic. Aunt Cass's voice echoing in the back of my head. I tried everything I could to cancel our anniversary dinner. I blamed a family commitment, but it turned out that Theodore had gone to my parents to ask for their blessing. So that plan failed. I told Theodore I had a deadline at work, but the editorial staff was in the loop and had cleared my schedule for the weekend. The night of the bistro dinner, we left straight from the office. Theodore went downstairs ahead of me to get a cab, and I looked frantically around my office for a reason to stay. "Do I have any messages?" I asked my assistant. Samuel shook his head, giving me a dopey grin. "None." "Check. The thing you need to understand is that I desperately wanted to marry Theodore. Everything about our relationship was amazing. The sex, the conversations, the unconditional emotional support. Everything. An engagement, however, was out of the question. When we got to Bistro, Theodore had reserved a quiet table in the corner. I observed all the small details, the music, the lighting, the flowers, and I suddenly felt dizzy, like I needed to sit down. Theodore pulled out the chair for me to sit. Yet another sweet and small romantic gesture that made me love him even more. "I can't marry you," I exclaimed. I'd never seen a person's face crumple like that. He was 31 years old, and he looked like a distraught toddler. Theodore let go of the back of my chair and started to back away from the table silently. "No," I said, seizing his hand. "You have to let me explain why." That's when I told him about Aunt Cass. "Chakak, it's really hard to explain, Aunt Cass. Our family was Italian, passionate, loud, and full of characters. An aunt who made racist comments after 3 glasses of wine. The cousin who would always end up passed out around a table. And Aunt Cass, who everyone said could predict the future. It supposedly started when she was a kid. Her mom asked her about having a play date with a friend, and 5-year-old Cass said she couldn't go because of Uncle Joey's funeral. Uncle Joey, healthy as a horse, collapsed and died of an aneurysm 2 days later. After that, her predictions were a regular occurrence. Sometimes, Aunt Cass delivered warnings, attempting to help family members avoid a negative consequence, like when she warned my oldest cousin, Mia, not to go to a school dance, or she'd risk a grave injury. Mia stayed home. The limo her friends rented was in a horrible accident, and 3 kids ended up in the hospital. Other times, Cass's predictions were more definitive, unavoidable, like when she told her cousin, Freddie, that he was about to be fired. He was furious, stormed away from the Sunday dinner table, called her a liar. Yet when his boss called him into her office 2 days later to give him the bad news, no one in our family, not even Freddie, was surprised. It was accepted family lore that Cass's predictions were accurate. For that reason, I did my best to avoid her. Occasionally, her predictions were positive, like when she told my sister Tori that she'd get into Juilliard. But for the most part, They were gloomy and eerie, words that would haunt you every moment until the prophecy was fulfilled. Aunt Cass tended to make her predictions in private conversations during our weekly Sunday dinners at Nonna's house, so I stuck with my sisters during those evenings. I did my best to never be on my own and in Cass's eyeline. Then one night, during my junior year of college, we were watching TV in Nonna's den, and my little sister stole my dessert. Just snatched up my chocolate chip cannoli with a wicked grin on her face. I whacked her in the arm and retreated to the kitchen to get a new one. It happened so fast. There Aunt Cass was, smiling at me as she brewed the coffee. And all of a sudden, she was speaking. "You'll have 3 men in your life," she said casually. I froze, one hand about to select a new dessert. Was this how it happened? Aunt Cass had cornered my sister Isabella last month to tell her that she'd never be a movie star, but Isabella hadn't mentioned such an informal tone. The first one will break your heart. The second man will become your fiancé, but will die before you can marry. The third will be your happily ever after, Aunt Cass continued. She handed me a napkin and a paper plate for my cannoli. Aunt Cass, I wasn't typically speechless. I had goosebumps on my arms and legs. She left the room, and I heard her start talking to my Nonna about a doctor's appointment she was taking her to the next day. Aunt Cass had delivered her prediction, and now she was ready to return to small talk. I didn't tell anyone. I had a boyfriend at the time. We'd been dating for 3 years, and we talked about marriage and kids. 6 months after Aunt Cass's prediction, I caught him cheating with my best friend. It was upsetting, but I wasn't surprised. Chag. This was the story I told Theodore that night at Bistro. The look he gave me afterward was scornful. "Gia, you can't possibly believe that nonsense," he said. I was crushed. Theodore had never looked at me like that before, with something close to contempt. He didn't know what it felt like to be in my family and watch impossible things occur and know that disbelief did nothing. I just love you too much to risk it," I exclaimed. My eyes filled with tears. I did love him. I loved Theodore with a strength of feeling I'd never experienced before. The second man will become your fiancé, but will die before you can marry. If he died, I would want to die as well. The thought of losing him was too much to bear. He stood there, absorbing the information, and I could see a shift in his expression. I was becoming a different person in his eyes. A kook, a nut job, someone not serious or stable enough to love and marry. It was infuriating that Aunt Cass had done this to me. I was 29 years old, and her prophecy had been haunting me for a decade. I avoided intimacy. I resigned myself to a lonely life. I was scared of never finding someone to love, and equally afraid that when I did, they would die, and it would somehow be my fault. Enough. A small voice inside my head pushed Aunt Cass out, and I felt calm and resolute for the first time in weeks. "It's really nothing," I said, striving to make my voice sound conversational. "It's just a hard thing to shake, and I paused, sensing it would give my next words more impact. "I've been lied to my entire life." It was as if a light that had flickered out reignited in Theodore's eyes. He looked at me hopefully. "Give me a little time," I said to him. "I just need to work it all out. Someday, maybe, I'd be able to give him a different answer." Our co-workers were shocked when I started dating my assistant, Samuel, a week later. He had always had a crush on me. He was young, impressionable, sweet, dopey. It was refreshing to be with him. Everything with Theodore had been so intense, and my relationship with Samuel was easy. We had to transfer him, of course, for HR purposes, and he ended up as the assistant to the editor in the office next door to Theodore. It was challenging, watching Theodore from afar for all those months. I watched him, watching me and Samuel, and I wished I could whisper what I was really thinking into his ear. It was simple to encourage a quick engagement and wedding. From the beginning, I told Samuel that I wanted to wait until after marriage for us to have sex, and he obliged. I blamed my Italian Catholic upbringing, and he was supportive. The abstinence was part of my plan to keep us moving forward. Nothing encourages a man to speed up a wedding date like a vow of chastity. After I accepted Samuel's proposal, after we told our families and started making plans for a wedding, after we set a date that was just 6 months away, I waited. It was agony. Theodore started to date. I couldn't invest in wedding planning with any enthusiasm when I knew the event wouldn't actually occur. My mother adored Samuel, who was happy to help with choices and errands, and they planned happily together while I pretended to be busy at work. I was at the office late one night when Theodore caught me by the hand as I was leaving. "What are you doing?" he asked me. "I thought you just needed time." I walked away. He would understand soon enough. 3 weeks before the wedding, I started to panic. 3 days before the wedding, Samuel took me to dinner at the restaurant where he'd proposed. It was the last time we'd see each other alone before the wedding. He had a bachelor party the next evening, and I had a bachelorette. And then we'd have the rehearsal dinner. It was so sweet that he'd thought, just as Theodore had, to bring me back to a restaurant where we'd had a beautiful memory. It seemed I was destined to have boyfriends who excelled at romance. I didn't feel romanced. I was terrified. I was waking up screaming at night, and I felt tremors in my hands and feet periodically throughout the day. I couldn't eat. I knew what true love was. I'd had it with Theodore. A marriage with Samuel would be devastating for me. after the years I'd spent as Theodore's lover. And if the wedding actually happened, well, my parents would throw a wild fit if I even mentioned the word divorce to them. I needed to end it. We took a walk through the park after dinner, and then we went up to the roof deck at the top of my apartment building. It was a cool evening. I walked over to the edge of the roof to stand at the railing. The building was 20 stories tall. I felt Samuel wrap his arms around me, rubbing my bare arms to keep me warm. "Do you want my jacket?" he asked. "No," I said. Then I seized his arm and swung him forward. I watched him fall 20 stories to the street. Chachara. It occurred to me during the memorial service that everyone in attendance would have been at our wedding. The death was ruled an accident by the authorities. No one had seen Samuel fall. After years of feeling like I lived beneath an unlucky star, things were working out in my favor. Aunt Cass hugged me tightly at the funeral. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," she said, crying and whispering so that only I could hear. "I hate when I'm right about these things." I hugged her back and wished that I could thank her for saving me from a worser fate. There was no way to know if I could trust her, though. The plan wasn't always supposed to be this. For weeks, I'd waited for some accidental calamity to befall Samuel. I would have grieved it. He was only 28 years old. But I wouldn't have had to resort to what I did. It simply wasn't fair, the way Aunt Cass's predictions ruined lives, ended lives. Jack, after everything was over, the funeral, the memorial service, I called Theodore and asked him to dinner. His voice sounded perplexed. "I've been thinking about you," he said. "I'm so sorry about what happened." It had been about a year since I'd rejected his proposal. "It was terrible," I said quietly. He was so young. Theodore was silent for a few moments. I wished that he was in the room with me, that I could look at his face and guess what he was thinking. "And you're calling to ask me to dinner?" he asked slowly. "Things are different now," I said. "Bistro, 7 p.m. There was another beat of silence. "I'll pick you up at 6:30 p.m., he said. We hung up, and I frowned. He didn't sound excited. But then, I'd broken his heart a year ago, and it might take time for things to mend. Trebchalo. When I opened the door at 6:30 p.m., 2 uniformed police officers were waiting to patiently explain to me about the footage that had been found on a neighbor's security camera and the motive that had been revealed to them by the love of my life. I used my phone call to reach Theodore. "How could you do this?" I asked him. I didn't even recognize my own voice. It was high-pitched, wild, and frantic. "Who's going to be my happily ever after?" "I don't know," he said coldly. "Maybe the lady in the cell next door." He slammed down the phone. That was ludicrous, I thought to myself. Aunt Cass's prediction had clearly stated that there would be 3 men in my life. I held the phone to my ear, briefly after he hung up. I needed a moment to breathe. All I could think about was Aunt Cass with her words that had haunted me for the past 10 years. The woman was insane. She ruined lives. These blades are made for wounding. The knife whispered to him in its innocent, mouse-like voice. Tatum. Blythe gritted his teeth and squeezed the blade's handle in a white-knuckle grip. Moisture threatened to spill over from his eyes. "No," he said. "Not now. Not tonight. Stop it. But the knife, as usual, paid him no mind. Half hidden in the reflection along the blade, the little face grinned. It giggled. Its high-pitched tones recalled the voices of untold Disney characters. Murder, Tatum, murder, killing, death, slayings, stabby, stab. Tears spilling from his eyes, he began to chop the onion like a madman. Meanwhile, the blade giggled and chattered about everything it could do. Stabbing and slicing Tatum, punctured lungs, impaled hearts, slashed open bellies, sweet, juicy, beautiful blood, Tatum. Like a fountain, Tatum. Like a goddamn fountain. Tatum chopped, diced, and sliced the onion into oblivion. The recipe had asked for onion cut into cubes, and he had gone overboard. Behind Tatum, the toilet flushed. The sounds of hand washing came, and then the bathroom lock clicked open. Luella Fairchild, indeed as fair as her family name declared, stepped out. "How's the meal prep going?" she asked. He chucked the knife into the sink with a metallic clang. He grabbed a different blade from the magnetic knife rack. "Great," he said, his voice cracking. "Oh, let me handle that," Lou said. Before he could stop her, she'd picked up the knife and turned the tap on. What could he say? "Don't touch that. The blade is sentient and maniacal." He'd be the one who sounded insane. She'd leave and never look back. Hell, she'd tell her friends to steer clear of him, and they'd inform their friends. He'd be alone forever. So, he watched her with the knife. He waited for a tiny voice to delight in obscenities. Luella pre-washed the knife under the tap. With the sponge, she wiped the blade clean until it glinted. And then, she placed the knife into the dishwasher. Meanwhile, the knife said nothing. She caught his gaze as she bent down to the dishwasher. A small smile touched the corner of her lips, but there was a flash of confusion, like light on a blade, in her eyes. "What?" he laughed. The sound was wild and unhinged. "Nothing. Hey, would you pass me the wine? I want to caramelize these onions." "It's on the dining room table." The caution in her face softened, and her smile became more relaxed. "Sure thing. You sure do know your way around a kitchen, Tatum. I can't wait to try it. Be right back." He sighed and scrolled on his phone through the rest of the recipe. His battery was running low, so he plugged it into the charger cable he always kept on the counter. So, the next step is to, half a second after Lou had left the room, the fresh knife in his hands chuckled. Murder, Tatum. Beautiful, cold-blooded murder. Stab her in the back, Tatum, in the back. Get her in the kidneys and watch her bleed out. Gorgeous killings, Tatum. Slash, stab, and slice. No, not this one, too. Could it be that it wasn't the knives at all? That it was him? That he was the one who was insane? Tatum took the knife and threw it at the wall. He screamed, not thinking about his present company. No! The blade thudded into the wall with the accuracy of a circus knife thrower. It punctured the wall, pointy end first, and remained there, wobbling from the force. Behind him, Luella screamed and jumped, dropping the wine. The bottle hit the kitchen tiles and shattered. Glass fragments and splashes of wasted wine flew in all directions. That was that then. The gig was up. Lou knew he was nuts. Tatum turned to look at her. He stood there, panting, eyes wide, hair wild, madness written all over his face. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, Lou. I'm so sorry. You need to leave. Hands held to her collarbone. Lou stepped around the glass and approached him. She reached for him, shaking. Will you please tell me what's going on, Tatum? Her voice hitched. I can help. You need to trust me and open up. It's not good to keep this sort of thing trapped deep inside. He stammered. I can't. Tatum, leave. Go on. Get out. Go. Now! A heartbeat passed between them. Lou's eyes couldn't grow any wider. The world held its breath. The knives said nothing. And then the woman burst into tears and bolted from his apartment. Tatum sobbed. What was wrong with him? Had he lost it? Were the men in white coats coming to take him away? Ha! Coming to take him away? Tatum slammed the door shut. He took a step, tripped over the open dishwasher, and fell backwards. He landed on the knife Luella had cleaned and placed upright. The blade sliced through his back and penetrated out through his chest in a gout of blood. The wet metal glinted. Yay! Murder! Squeaked a tiny voice. Tatum gasped as the cold hands of death squeezed his heart. He reached up for his phone on the counter. His fingers crawled like a blind spider until Tatum found it. Lou! He choked, blood dribbling from his mouth. Lou? The charger cable, still plugged in, caught around something and yanked. The knife rack toppled from the kitchen counter, spilling the knives into the air. The glinting blades twirled and plunged like Olympic divers going for gold. They punctured him and left him pin-cushioned. A choir of voices rose in ecstasy. Yay! He should have told Luella what was going on. He'd been too scared to speak about this madness, fearing it would drive her away. But he'd driven her away anyway, and it had resulted in his death. He shouldn't have kept it all bottled inside. Now it was too late. Tears trickled from his eyes and intermingled with the blood spilling from his mouth as he faded away. The knives wriggled inside him, giggling about death and murder. Not the brightest bulb. The light panned over the coast, gutting the night like a blade through a fish's belly. Emerson, Li Saw. From experience, he knew the storm would be raging well into the next day. But he'd be safe here. This lighthouse had weathered many storms before this one, and it would weather many more after, too. It had stood here since before he was born, and it would stand long after he was dead, which wouldn't be long now, he reasoned. He raised his metal cup to the windows, which looked out onto the frothing midnight ocean. He offered the night his cheers, then sipped his neat rum. Lightning lit up the abyss, burning his retinas white for one faltering heartbeat. The wind whipped and whooped around the edges of the lighthouse. The rumble of thunder came 3 seconds later, reverberating through his bones. Emerson blinked. The ocean was a cruel mistress sometimes. He knew that more than anybody. He'd spent much of his life aboard fishing vessels, at sea for months. He felt more at home on the open sea than on dry land. That was why he'd taken on the task of lighthouse keeper after retirement. But it seemed that people had lost their respect for the water. Kids rode inflatable beds out on riptides and needed rescuing. Rich yuppies took their boats out in unsafe conditions and needed rescuing. Partying youngsters went for midnight swims whilst inebriated. They drew the attention of the sea beasts, which they then hunted for revenge. And thus, the creatures needed rescuing due to their dwindling numbers. Companies dumped their foul excretions into the blue, so the sea needed rescuing too. Emerson growled and scowled out. The thunder and lightning lashed from the heavens once again. The rain pelted sideways at the window, rattling against the glass. The gale screamed like a dying creature, wounded by a harpoon. Another sound chimed throughout the lighthouse, but this had nothing to do with thunder. He grunted. Somebody had rung the lighthouse's doorbell. Who on earth could that be? The lighthouse clung to a rocky piece of coast that jutted out into the ocean. It was far from any town or village, as Emerson liked it. The only company he usually had came in the form of passing boats and hungry seagulls. Emerson took another swig of rum and set his cup on the table. The wood bore the marks of 1,000,000 condensation rings from the rum mugs of history. He grumbled to himself and passed through the door to the spiral staircase. The doorbell rang again as he descended. with care, the final treacherous steps. He threw the door open to the howling wind. "Yar, I'm coming, I'm coming. Hold your seahorses." On the stoop, two kids huddled together, no older than 18. They clung to one another as the wind whipped at them, and the storm soaked them to their bones. "I'm sorry, sir," said the boy, raising his voice over the gale. "But our car broke down, and we're stranded. Can we please hold up with you until the storm has passed?" Emerson was not a people person, but he was also not a heartless monster either. He opened the door to the boy and the girl and guided them up the staircases. "Yar, come in, come in. You're wetter than water. I got some blankies upstairs. Come, let's get you and your lass dry. Me name's Emerson." The boy smiled and offered his hand despite the chill that shook him. "Thanks, man. You're the best, Harry. And this is Skyla." Emerson led them up the winding staircase to the lighthouse's upper room, lit by the beacon. He got some dry towels, stale and mutt-eaten, but dry, and put the kettle on for warm tea. You must be pretty frightened. What with you stranded in the dark and the rain, while the sea beats her chest like King Kong. She can be mighty fierce." The boy pulled a face and shook his head. He wrapped a towel around Skyla's shoulders before he tended to himself. "No, inconvenienced and uncomfortable, but not scared." Emerson frowned, but bit his tongue. He guided the youngsters to his couch. It wouldn't be the first time it got wet, and handed them mugs of steeping tea. He sighed and sat down opposite them on his old rickety chair. "And what, if you don't mind me asking, were you two doing out here this late at night?" The boy and the girl blushed. Harry started to say something, but then Skyla interrupted. She shoved her left hand into Emerson's face. A diamond glinted on her ring finger. "Harry proposed to me tonight." As the sun set over the water, staining it red, the color of love. Isn't that romantic? To Emerson, red was the color of blood, once you'd chummed the waters to lure in the big fish. But he didn't say this. "Yar, it do warm this old sea dog's heart to see young love in bloom. Why, my Batilda and I, we shared quite a torrid love affair, we did. But she's been sleeping with the fishes for longer'n you been alive. I still carry her picture in this old locket here, which I wear around me neck at all times. Here, take a look at this beauty, lad, but don't lose your eye for the young lass now, aye." The boy blinked at the picture in the sea air-rusted locket. He did a double take. He seemed to struggle for words. His eyebrows knotted together like a bowline. "Sir, that's a manatee," Emerson recoiled. "You youngsters and your unrealistic, Hollywood beauty standards. You shouldn't perpetuate such unhealthy attitudes towards appearances. It only fosters anxiety and insecurity. Yar, you might be young and lovely now, but see how pretty you look in 60 years. Let's see how you are once the sea's done rusted your lungs and your legs been took by an orca and a great white workin' in cahoots. The girl reached over and rapped a knuckle on his shin. A smirk touched the corners of her lips. "But sir, both your legs are still attached," Emerson yelped and tucked his legs back under his chair. "I jumped into the blood-stained brine. I did. Wrestled me legs back from the bellies of the respective beasts at the same time. Fought them both off, using nothing but me bare hands. I sewed them back on, I did, using nothing but a bit of old gut fishing line. I cleaned the wounds by spitting on 'em, then patched myself back up. It hurt for a while, but it didn't affect me well-trained balance on the deck. Yar, at sea you needs good sea legs, especially whilst Poseidon's throwing you about like a dusty old rug that your mama's trying to clean." The kids exchanged a glance and snickered. "That didn't happen, did it, sir?" asked the boy. "You're having us on." Emerson bit his lip. He knew how to get through to these young'uns, to teach them the proper respect they ought to have for the ocean. Emerson had seen waves taller than buildings and fish bigger than elephants. He'd seen currents sweep sailors to their doom in seconds. Emerson had seen men sink into the abyss as waves pummeled them like a boxer in a match with no referee to ring the bell. These kids had been on dry land, but the ocean was hungry. She could reach out and snatch you from the shore if she wanted. They had gotten lucky. The midnight tide hadn't pulled them out to sea whilst the boy popped the question. Emerson got to his feet and slipped out the door to the spiral staircase. "I have something to show yer. You wait right here, my lovelies." Confused whispers came from behind him. Outside, the storm continued to rage. The wind screamed and the rain lashed. The ocean roared and threw itself against the lighthouse's base. The foundations shuddered. Emerson found the switch, covered in warning stickers, and flicked it. The lighthouse went dark. A small shriek came from above. He ascended in shadow, grinning at the panicked voices. He barged through the door and clicked the torch on. He illuminated his haggard face from below and bellowed. It was a dark and stormy night. Harry and Skyla screamed and clung to each other, their faces pulled in a rictus of terror in the torch's beam. "What the hell?" began the boy, but Emerson cut him off. The ocean was raging. The night was black. You couldn't tell where the sky ended and the water began. And we all knew that she, the creature, was out there hunting us. The hunters had become the hunted. A foghorn shattered the tension, deafening them all. Harry jumped up, knocking his chair over backwards. Skyla shrieked and threw her hands up to her face. A flick of a fish's tail later, the lighthouse shook around them. A great, wrenching metallic crunch rocked the world. Ice froze his limbs. He broke through the paralysis and staggered to the window. He shined his flashlight onto the rocks below. "Good God," whispered Emerson. The jagged stones had acted like a shark's teeth, puncturing the ship's hull. It leaned like a drunken sailor, 45 degrees to the side. On top, seamen clung to the rails, whilst others tried to scramble about the rain-wet deck. Baffled shouts punctured the storm's wailing. Boxes of cargo crashed into the surf. Some sailors tossed life rings into the brine to rescue men overboard. Emerson whimpered. This lighthouse had not had a single accident for almost 100 years. And now, in one swift hour, he'd caused a disaster. He should never have exaggerated the truth to impress these kids. The ocean was scary and beautiful enough as it was. It didn't need cheapening with manufactured myths and legends, but he'd tried to scare them into respecting the fierce hand of nature. Tried and failed. They thought he was an old coot who'd messed up on the job, and they wouldn't exactly be wrong now, would they? He'd forgotten the very lesson he'd been trying to teach. His shoulders slumped. "Yar, I'm not the brightest bulb, methinks. All for science. It's a jungle out here. I'd been warned. Predators and prey of every size and description around every corner. Anywhere can be breathtakingly beautiful and equally breathtakingly deadly. Stay alert to stay alive. Even with safeguards in place, I find myself in terrifying peril. Time's running out. The end is near. I fear no help is in the offering. I am on my own. No hope left. It's getting more and more difficult to breathe. Humidity so thick, it's like sucking a wet sponge. But I can't give up. Yet. I see my short life flashing before me. Might pass out soon. How can this be happening? Time's law. Won a grant to study rainforest in Amazon. All for science. Far back as I can, remember I had a love for plants, instilled by my mother. Rest her soul. She raised exotic plants. So I wanted to emulate her, made it into a great university. Oh, that hurt. Can't think straight. Getting lightheaded. Most of my history will be found in in my journals. When did I last make an entry? Right. When I arrived. Was going to add more tonight. Oh, well, best laid plans. He has me pinned right where he wants me, trembling in fear. Grip tightens. Oh, hope Adam knows I really did love him. Wanted to be his wife. But so ironic when I think about it now. How we were saving ourselves for marriage. Mutually agreed. The right thing to do with our bodies. Not give in to temptation and all that. Yeah, we made it to some bases, but overall, still a virgin. At 23, could have gotten married long ago, but we wanted our master degrees first. I tried to scream at first. Takes too much breath. Now, look at my body. I tried so hard. Stay in shape. Stay healthy. Exercise. Eat right. There'll be nothing left. A pith helmet and designer cargo pants, if that. Ow. Think that was a rib. That cracked. Snap, crackle, pop. If lung punctured, maybe put me out of misery sooner. Yes, I should pray for that. Make this end, please. Oh, hurts so much. Get it over with. Already. Oh, must confess all my sins and beg forgiveness. Please forgive me for not serving you and my fellow man better. Thank you for saving grace. Remember me in your kingdom, please. So X crook ating. Think pleasant thoughts. Night first met Adam. Halloween party, college, junior year. Friend convinced me wear outlandish costume. A pleathery sleeping bag looking wrap that looked like a giant anaconda swallowing me whole. Ironic, right? Lower jaw pushed up my D-cup cleavage to my neck. Only my arms and head stuck out. Above the form-hugging, diamond-studded snakeskin created quite the shapely bulge 40 and 26-36. The upper jaw looked like a hoodie coming over my head. Adam and every other straight male took notice, but Adam's field of study is snakes. They're his passion. More so than me, I fear. He seemed jealous of my trip here. I only look at plants. He would have so many snakes to admire snakes. Ah, believe he would classify this charmer as a reticulated python. He has me wrapped in multiple coils, intending to make me his meal. I'm afraid, enjoying squeezing every last breath out of me until I pass out or die, making me easier to devour whole without a struggle. More bones he can break will make me slide down so much easier. It won't be long now, being crushed like a tin can. Everything hurts, breaths getting shallower, all alone on a hike, not far from camp. Stopped to examine flora. He dropped out of canopy above. Even if I looked up, he would resemble dripping vines. Was he stalking me, or I happened to stumble into his domain? Easy prey, fast delivery, knife strapped to my thigh. Once he had me in his grip. He moved so fast, I didn't stand a chance. Maybe butt dial help? Phone in my back pocket. Reached for it. Now, arms pinned behind me. Chest thrust out between coils. Pretty picture, no doubt. Oh. Try not to imagine the coming horror. Maws above me, already drooling. Smells putrid. I can hear his forked tongue testing, tapping my pith helmet. It deflects saliva away from my face for now. It's strapped on. If he tries to dislodge it, my head may be ripped off too. Less misery for me. Please let this end. With each exhale, he takes up the space, crushing me more, making impossible to get air. Oh, the pain. Agonizing pain. Adam once told me. This guy is one of most efficient killers in world. Only the best. For me. Oh, don't laugh. Takes too much breath. He's getting more efficient. Once I pass out, he'll easily swallow me whole. Connective tissue allows jaws to open wide. He'll walk them over my head and face. Hope he chokes on helmet. Backward pointing fangs prevent me from escaping if I'm still alive. Sure, as if once prey in throat. Strong muscular contractions work mass down through long esophagus into juicy, thick stomach, all prepared for heavy task of digestion. May slow him down several days. My body quivering in terror, Carnivorous. 100%. No flora for him. Can swallow prey. Much larger. Thicker than himself. He'll bathe it in lots of slimy, acidic juices and digest everything except hair and nails. Things with keratin. Those will be expelled as pellets. Wonder about cargo pants and hiking boots. Someone someday find pile of designer scat? I'm such a comedian sometimes. Maybe I'll taste funny, so he'll spit me out. Don't wanna be snake food. Oh. Skalda, is someone over there? Behind those ferns? Help me, please. Fading fast. Out of time. Hello, Eve, my love. Imagine finding you here, hanging out with a serpent. You're turning a bit purple. Oh, Adam. Thank goodness. Save me. Can't breathe. He's breaking every bone. The pain is unbearable. Destroy this monster. Let me beat him with this stick. Let go of her, you horrible purple people eater. Sorry, not working, doll. Can't say I didn't try. Besides, how could I possibly forgive myself for destroying such a magnificent specimen? He's only doing what comes naturally. You look like a piece of meat to him. Can't blame him. He's made a delectable selection. Just look at the way he is working you over. Kind of like the way you twisted everything around in your journal I found back home when I was watering your plants. You were ready to dump me after all our dreams and plans, simply because I gave in to temptation and bedded that perky waitress. She didn't deny me any of her body, unlike you. Oh, can't touch this. Now who is touching you everywhere? And you expect me to save you? Adam, please, can't last much longer. The end is near. Tell you what, sweetheart. How about I make you a movie star? You look hotter than I have ever seen you, all coiled up, cozy-like, with that hungry python. Your boobs are sticking out between the coils and look good enough to eat. Oh, that is his plan, all right. Such a tasty morsel for him. I'm gonna film it all in the name of research. The eating and mating habits of the reticulated python. My favorite subject. It will pay for this nice little vacation I granted myself. But he'll get a good portion of that too. Let me help him out by taking off that ridiculous hat and those heavy boots. Maybe I can slip off those long pants as you are slipping down the hatch. Don't want to be too hard on his delicate system. Hard enough swallowing a prickly prude. Smile pretty for the camera. Look like you are enjoying this once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's all for science. There you go now. You'll make a sexy, shapely bulge in his belly, my dear. You'll stay alive for a few hours. Be sure to thrash around in all the sweet, smelling bile. He'll like that. Gives him satisfaction. And it'll speed up the digestion so the burning won't last as long. I did mention it's gonna burn a bit, didn't I? Have fun. The end of Eve as we knew her. Epilogue. Adam. I'm funning with you folks. Of course. I waited a couple of hours, then showed up at her camp where they were missing poor Eve. I led a search party, and we happened upon this large, long, legless lizard, lounging languidly along a sunny ledge with a bulging bauble about the belly. In the name of science, we opened it up and found a slime-covered beet red, boiling mad, but still beautiful, busty, blonde botanist. She never would marry me, but she made a fortune telling her tale of what it felt like to be swallowed whole. And my secret porn video went viral. All for science, you understand.